Contrology, the Pilates method, the work. However you want to describe it, it is the brainchild of German creator and inventor Joe Pilates. Hello everyone, I'm Darian Gold. Thanks so much for joining us on All Things Pilates. Unless you are a Pilates geek, you may not know the history of Joe Pilates, especially the part about his internment during World War I on the Isle of Man, which is a little island situated between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. With us today is Jonathan Grubb, a Pilates instructor, practitioner, and Pilates historian who's lived on the Isle of Man almost his entire life. He originally began his research into the life of Joe Pilates after discovering his own great-grandfather was interned at the same camp and same time as Joe. Perhaps you recall Jonathan's visit to the show last year when he spoke about some of his Pilates discoveries and introduced us to his history-driven Facebook page. Now, Jonathan shares new details he's uncovered about Joe and his method. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, Darian. It's so nice to chat to you again, and thank you for having me back on the show.
Yes, welcome again. So, Jonathan, you have a unique story in part because your great-grandfather was also interned on the island at Camp Nocalo. How did you actually find this out, and why in the world was your great-grandfather interned in the first place?
Right. It was soon after I'd started Pilates that I was talking to my father about the fact we were doing Pilates, my wife and I, and that it was invented by a guy called Joseph Pilates who was interned here on the Isle of Man. And he said, well, of course, your great-grandfather was interned here as well. But at that time, my father thought that my great-grandfather was interned in the other camp that they had on the island, a smaller camp. And I thought, well, I'll just find out about it, see when he was here, if he was here, if that was true. And it's only then when I started looking at our museum's historical data on Nocalo internment camp that I found out that he actually was interned in Nocalo. And it's actually coming up to 150 years since my great-grandfather was born, 2nd of July, 1871. And
Wow.
further on during my research, it actually dawned on me that my great-grandfather was interned in the same subcamp as Joseph Pilates, which at first I didn't realize. But it's only by virtue of the fact that each camp, subcamp within Nocalo had its own newspaper, and my great-grandfather was reported as having come in third in a couple of horticultural competitions, and in the same camp newspaper, a different edition, it mentions Joseph Pilates actually refereeing a boxing match. So that's when kind of I put two and two together and I realized, wow, they were in the same subcamp. So no more than 5,000 internees in that subcamp. So yeah, that's got me really excited about kind of finding out more about the camp, Joseph Pilates, my great-grandfather, and what life was like there.
He was interned because...
He was German born. He was born in Bavaria, a town or village called Ulmet. And he was in England before war broke out. He was married. He had 4 English-born sons. But purely by virtue of the fact he was German-born meant that he was ultimately arrested and interned in an internment camp. Initially, he probably would have gone to Lancaster internment camp in the UK, where Joseph Pilates also was, and then subsequently transferred over to the Isle of Man. My great-grandfather was interned for actually a period of 5 years. So almost a year after the war finished, he was still interned, waiting for his application to stay in England to be approved, because Many of them, once they were released, they were sent straight back to Germany, even if they had family in the UK. So there was no guarantee he would stay in England.
That means that your great grandmother and their children lost their father basically for 5 years.
That's correct. Yeah, lost their family. I'm not sure on income how they would have survived. Whether the state helped people in that position. Long before social security benefits that we have in the UK here, so they would have probably struggled to survive. My grandfather, he was actually in the British Army fighting for the British as this was going on. So yeah, there was no dispensation for anything like that. It was purely German born. You were arrested and put in a camp.
Then
He was
after
a musician before he was interned. And I do have newspaper reports where a group of musicians were arrested in Southport, which is where he lived, probably about a week before a large group of internees were arrested in Blackpool, which is possibly the time when Joseph Pilates was interned. So they were arrested and interned fairly much within a week of each other, I would suspect.
And Joe was on the island for 4 years.
He was on the island for 3.5 years. So he was arrested and interned, possibly August 1914, but it could be 8th of September 1914, according to this newspaper report, because that's the first large group of Germans that were arrested. Prior to that, there were individuals arrested for firearms offences or not registering, and their names were listed in the newspaper articles. So, yeah, from about September 1914 through to March 1919, Joe was interned. About a year at Lancaster, possibly. There is some suggestion he was at other camps, but he might have just been at Lancaster for a year. In the newspaper article where he's interviewed, he did say he was there for a year and then came to the Isle of Man.
Do you possess those articles, or you saw the articles online?
I have the newspaper articles, so some of this is future posts that I'm working towards in my
Fantastic.
Facebook group. So I still have, quite a bit of things to share in my group yet. It's interesting, kind of last year when you interviewed me, you asked me where things were going with my research, and like I said, I don't know, see what happens. To be honest, I was getting to a point where I thought I might not find anything more. But incredibly, here I am a year on and still finding stuff and still have some fantastic stuff to share with
That's
people.
exciting, Jonathan.
I'm really excited about what's coming up, but I won't give any spoilers. But it's the first generation Pilates teacher, and I'm just really excited about what I'm going to be sharing.
That's so fantastic. We're grateful to have you in the community, because it's this big missing link that helps us all feel more connected to this man and to his method, and all the people on the periphery who either taught for him or relatives or people who influenced him. And there are a few that you're going to discuss in a little bit. I wanted to ask you, are there more parts of the camp that people don't know about that you think is applicable here?
I think the general history of the camp, it's all applicable, and there's more information being found out all the time. The researchers at the Centre for First World War Internment at Nocalo, they're still ongoing with their research. They have lots of information that they're still collating, and it's like little pieces of jigsaws that they're putting together, and some of these pieces overlap, and it's when these pieces overlap you get connections between different individuals, and that starts to build up a picture, and it's just exciting just to be part of this in a small way. I mean, I'm not involved with the charity that run it, but I do kind of contact them and share information if I find information about individuals that are kind of more connected to what my line of research is about, but it still is an internee that they would be interested in, then I'm happy to share that information with them, and they help me with queries I have about Joe or things that happened in the camp.
I think for some of our listeners who perhaps didn't listen to that first interview, maybe they will now, but I remember in one part you put this Facebook page together and you had your own reasons, of course, because you have this connection, but you didn't know how it would play out in the public. And I remember you saying you would be happy if you had 100 followers. Remember? Then you said, then I can't believe I had 1,000 followers, and now you have how many?
7,500, 7,500. It's been incredible. I think it was up to 5,500 last year when you interviewed me. So it's just growing and growing. And it's just amazing the positive comments that people have made, either through comments about posts I've shared or direct messages to me. They've just said what a massive difference it's made, and just how they really enjoy reading the posts and how much it means to them. So I'm just so encouraged by all that.
And you know what? I think because of this last year, all that we've had to deal with, learning about Joe at this point in his life, giving those of us who are crazy about his work so much more connection from a deeper place, so that when we practice his work, we feel him maybe a little bit, the resonance of him is louder because of your contribution. So I think it's pretty fantastic, Jonathan.
Oh, thank you. It is. I mean, yeah, there's that understanding of where it came from and what he went through, the trials he endured, and all that hardship. And yeah, it's been a tough year, obviously, for everybody, but yeah, it kind of does put things into a little bit of perspective. The things that they went through, the Spanish flu, TB was kind of common in those days. We forget, a lot of illnesses and diseases that were commonplace we don't have now. We're very fortunate in the world we live in. So yeah, just sort of sharing that side of things as well just helps hopefully bring things into perspective for people.
Absolutely. Do you have any information about this museum that has come about? When did this museum, there's a main museum and then there's a sub museum, or?
Yeah, on the Isle of Man, we have our Manx National Heritage, the Isle of Man Museum. So anybody from the Isle of Man, the term referred to them is their Manx. So if you're from England, you're English. If you're from the Isle of Man, you're Manx. That's the general term for somebody from the Isle of Man. So we have our central Manx Museum, who have a lot of information about Nagalo. They have all the photographs of internees, etc. But also we have a privately run, charity-run museum called the Nagalo Visitor Centre, which is also called the Centre for First World War Internment. So this came about, I think, late September 2014. A group of individuals that live in the area of where the camp was realised that the Isle of Man in general, the population had no idea about this history, this recent history of the Isle of Man, and that it was being forgotten about. Children growing up were unaware that this huge camp of over 23,000 people, and including the guards, etc. It was a whole town in a very small area, and they felt it was important to kind of preserve that history before it was totally forgotten. So they had an old schoolroom, which is just opposite the entrance to the main Lochelo campsite. It was used as a building during the internment. I think it was used by the army, wasn't used for the internees. And it was falling into disrepair, probably might have been sold by the Isle of Man government to get rid of it. So they felt it was the ideal opportunity to develop and refurbish this building and make a museum there, a permanent reminder of the events that went on there 100 years ago, as it was in 2014 when they decided to do this from the start of the First World War. It took some years for them to raise the funding, to get the building refurbished. They did an amazing job. I went in before they started work, and it was just a typical 100-plus-year-old building, damp, flaking wallpaper, paint, and yeah, I just didn't envisage what it would look like when they'd finished, and they've done an amazing job.
So it's complete. It's complete now.
It is complete, yeah. In May 2019, it was the official opening, and I was very honoured to be one of 4 people to be the official openers. There was 3 residents on the island who were direct descendants of internees, plus 1 descendant had come over especially, and that was the official opening early May 2019. And unfortunately last year they had to close because of COVID, but they're back open again. So I'm looking forward to going down there and having another visit. I've not been inside for 2 years now, so there's lots of information in there.
Really have you good. Posted? Have you posted a photo of the museum?
I posted one picture because they had a replica model made of the camp, so it's kind of in very small detail, but an exact replica made from the plans, so you can get a real idea of the layout of the camp. So I have posted that, but I haven't posted pictures from inside. I'd need to get permission for that. So
I was just going to ask.
Yeah, I want to keep it a surprise for those that can come over and visit maybe one day and actually see the camp. So I don't want to post pictures all over the place of it. So.
And Alison Jones is still part of this?
She is, yeah. She's one of the main sort of researchers and the trustee of the charity. So she does an amazing job, and she's busy collating all this information that they're getting from all around the world, from the thousands and thousands of descendants. Because it's not only that the history, but sort of genealogy, family history is a big business, and that's how I do some of my research, finding people is from one of these ancestry websites. And they have a lot of people coming over to visit the site, wanting to try and find out more about their relatives that have been interned there. So their family history side of what they're doing is very important as well, because that gives people that information about their relatives that were interned there that previously was just not available. So that's another aspect of this research centre that is just invaluable to people worldwide.
Let me ask you about your Facebook page. Followers 7,500 and counting. Is there an article or a photo that you came to be in possession of that either took you by surprise or that it gave you pause?
There's been quite a few, actually, especially in the sort of past 12 months since you last spoke to me. Just some of the people that I have found out about that were first generation teachers that hitherto had been unheard of, nobody had ever mentioned before. So I think Dorothy Alexander in particular stands out, and just finding initially the fact that there was a studio in Atlanta, a Pilates studio in Atlanta, and then being able to find out who that person was who had that studio.
What year are we talking about? What decade?
This was 1940, 1941. I think the newspaper article was from 1941, which mentioned two studios other than Joe's studio and Fred Pilates' studio. There was a studio in Atlanta and one in Denver, and this was in a 1941 newspaper article from a St. Louis newspaper. So it must have been Fred who placed this advert in, and it says Pilates Perfect Body Studio. So they were kind of endorsed, these two studios. So that really got me digging deep, trying to find out, well, who could possibly have had these studios. And yeah, Dorothy Alexander was the founder of Atlanta Ballet, and she had trained with Joe. I found that out from her niece. And not only did she teach contrology, as she called it, obviously back then, but she influenced other people. I subsequently found out about Molly Brumby, who was also a dancer, who was a dancer with Atlanta Ballet, trained with Joe. I found the newspaper article stating she trained rigorously with Joe. She went on to form Montgomery Ballet. So there was that connection from Dorothy Alexander to another Pilates trained teacher. And very recently, I had the pleasure of speaking to Annie Woolley Schaffer, who many people will have seen film clip of her at Joe's studio with that kind of thing balanced on her head.
Oh, brilliant.
Well, Anna was at Atlanta Ballet as well, and she told me when she went to New York and started with the American Ballet Theatre, she had a bad back and she didn't know what to do. She said she rang Miss Dorothy. Miss Dorothy said, go to Joe. So that influence from Dorothy Alexander, it was just fantastic to find that and that connection with other Pilates teachers. That was amazing. One of the other most intriguing things is a post I did. Initially, I was posting about martial arts and jiu-jitsu because some people said there wasn't any jiu-jitsu in Europe at that time, so Joe couldn't have studied judo or jiu-jitsu. But there clearly was from the newspaper articles I found. And in fact, I found that there was a German wrestler in Britain who had fought Japanese jiu-jitsu experts who'd come over. That wrestler was interned at Narcalo. He was teaching jiu-jitsu and self-defense and did a jiu-jitsu demonstration. So that was a fantastic find. But also connected to that was Chuck Rappaport also mentioned in a post that he remembered a self-defense weapon that Joe had shown him when he was at the studio doing all those photographs. So I asked Chuck if he'd draw a sketch of it, and he did and sent that through to me. He was happy for me to share that into the group, and it was quite an amazing device, actually. I did martial arts when I was younger, and yeah, I could see just quite how devastating a little piece of weapon it would be. And yeah, on the streets of New York in the 20s, 30s, I'm guessing that's kind of gangsters time. So yeah, something like that would be highly effective and useful to have in your pocket. So there's been that, and then just other physical culturists, just finding the links between them and Michaela Camp, such as Jürgen Muller, who was a Danish physical culturist and well-renowned fitness expert.
1910s? Is this in the 1910s?
Yeah, he kind of preceded Joe, 1910s. One of the wonderful things was his granddaughter was in my group, and she actually is doing Pilates. I think she's in Spain, if my memory serves me well. And it was just amazing to think, you know, her father had this amazing exercise system himself, but she was doing Pilates. Unfortunately, she was born kind of when her father was very elderly, so she never got to practice Jorgen Muller's system, which would have been amazing to have somebody who had practiced both methods and could compare the two directly. But it's just been fantastic to chat to these people and reach out to them and make these connections.
Are you trying to dig in more to his method to see if you can find more material?
Not at present, but that's kind of something on the cards. He's just had, there's been a autobiography released about him, but it's just in Danish at the moment. So possibly there'll be an English version, which will be good to read and probably give me some grounds for digging deeper and finding out more about him. Because his granddaughter said, like Joe, he was kind of a sickly child, and they didn't think he would make it either. So kind of, I think it's that period when there was large families and childhood sickness was obviously very much more prevalent in those days. So I think that determination to get fit and strong was kind of inherent in some people at that time.
You know, one of my questions was going to be, it's not needed now, but I wanted to know what keeps you going, but it sounds like you have so much more on the horizon that your Facebook page has opened this whole new world to you that you definitely didn't anticipate, but I could foresee you walking down this road for many, many more years, don't you think?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's been an amazing journey. I mean, my wife and I, our Pilates journey and just learning the method has been quite amazing. The people we've got to meet around the world, it's just been incredible. And to have just that teaching from such world-renowned teachers has just been incredible. Just, we want to do it well. We want to do it as best as we can. And coming from a small island, we've been very blessed to be able to meet these amazing teachers. But kind of in parallel with that is this research I've been doing that has just been an incredible journey from where I started, just kind of sharing a few things about the Isle of Man and his time here, and then it's just expanded and just snowballed and snowballed. And yeah, I mean, that eagerness to find more information and share it with everybody, it's Joe's legacy. That's why I called it Joseph's legacy. And we all benefit from.
So tell our listeners again, the name of your Facebook page is?
So the name of the Facebook group is Joseph's Legacy Pilates 100 Plus. So it's just his legacy that everybody benefits from, that I just want to find out more about it and share that with people. But it's not just the sharing of the information that is important to me now. It's just the fact that so many people have just so enjoyed reading about it and have just been sort of so full of enthusiasm for it, the comments they've made, and just the massive thank yous I've had from people is just a blessing. And that just really spurs me on more than anything, just to share that with everybody.
If someone does want to get a hold of you and they don't want to get a hold of you through Facebook, do you give out your email address?
I do. I can. Yeah, I can. It's jgrubb@live.com.
Okay. All right. You might be inundated, but I was just thinking maybe there's more of a personal connection someone wants to make and they want a quiet moment with you that maybe.
Yeah, that's fine. And I mean, so far, nobody in the group has ever said that they're a descendant of an internee. And I'm still thinking there must be, of the thousands and thousands of descendants of internees there are worldwide, there must be some that do Pilates, because there's millions of people do Pilates. So it would be fantastic to find somebody else who does Pilates, who's enthusiastic about it, who might want to find something out about a relative who was interned there, and they're not sure how to do that, or perhaps not even aware of it. But if they have an inkling, we could find out, we could research it and find out.
But you have posted this question on your page, right?
I have, but maybe not everybody sees the posts. I don't know. The way Facebook works, some people have the 7,500. Not everybody probably gets it. They might not be getting the notifications of new posts. So I don't know. There might be somebody who's not aware of that. Or they're new to the group and they haven't scrolled back to look at the old posts, which I recommend people do because they've missed so much if they just joined recently.
Yes, I agree. Firsthand, I agree. So some amazing posts, Jonathan. And I want to thank you for your time today. And of course, you're always welcome back with new information. I love having you and Carol in class. You both are such great, hard workers. And any final words from the Isle of Man?
Well, we just love doing your classes as well, Darian. We're very blessed that we got to meet you last year, so that's been wonderful to reach out across the globe and just make friends with people, and one day we perhaps meet in person.
Yes.
That'd be fantastic. And
yes,
yeah, it's
well,
just so good.
I plan on it for sure, and we just have to keep putting the good energy out there that an Isle of Man get together with amazing people, all wanting to practice truthfully this work and be part of Joe's legacy.
That would be fantastic.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for my post come up in July, which will be quite amazing. It's about a first generation Pilates teacher that very little is known about, and I'm excited about what's coming.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, you're welcome. You know I love sharing the Pilates method, whether I'm teaching online or now live in my studio. I wanted you to meet another one of my students, and her name is Susan Timken. She is fun and full of mischief, who not only is committed to her practice, but continues to be curious as to what else is possible for maintaining a healthy body. Susan says, "The Pilates method for fitness of body and mind has been a touchstone for the last year and a half. The practice has kept me sane and centered in this time of upheaval, with nothing the same. Clearly, we have no control over aging. We do, however, have control over how we age. Pilates provides the path to concentration, agility, and challenge." All Things Pilates is created, produced, and hosted by me, Darian Gold. If you'd like to learn more about Pilates, the traditional approach, or sign up for my online group or private lessons, please visit dariangold.com. And until we meet again, why not look into your family history? Who knows, you might discover you have a famous relative. In our next episode, we welcome Liz Koch, who has had a love affair with the psoas muscle. Join us and discover the wild wisdom of your psoas. Thanks so much for tuning in to All Things Pilates.